Good morning, Ambassador John Estrada. Thank you for hosting us this morning. Mr. Juan Miguel Diaz, Director, UNIC. Ms. Irma Burkett, UNATT. The Public Affairs Officer, Mr. Stephen Weeks. The Public Affairs Specialist, Ms. Charlene Thomas. Mr. Welsey Gibbings, whom I hope is en route. President of the Association of Caribbean Media Workers. Ms. Francesca Hawkins, President of the Media Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Our facilitators, Mr. Jim Clancy, broadcast journalist formerly with CNN, internationally renowned editor and journalist. Dr. Mercedes Vignor, Associate Director of the International Media Center for the Florida International University School of Journalism and Mass Communications. Mrs. Alison Bettel McKenzie, journalist and editor and former director of the International Press Institute. Before the day goes by, I would like to specially recognize Mr. Weeks, Kieran, Charlene, and Fazilet, who isn't here this morning, but is busy putting things together for us for this evening's activities. All of whom are responsible for this workshop today are taking place, and I want to give a special thank you to them for putting it together. Most importantly, the message this morning is to you, the reporters and journalists, all of you who make our businesses realities. You have taken up the mantle this morning to relearn your craft and also celebrate World Press Freedom Day 2016, whose theme is access to information and fundamental freedoms. This is your right. But I say this is not only your right, it is the right of the 1.4 million Trinidad and Tobago citizens. The right for you to inform them as vigorously, as passionately, as conscientiously, and above all, with the highest journalistic standards. So with that, I would say, let the proceedings open to journalism, new journalism 101. I say thank you.
I'm happy to be here with you to celebrate World Press Freedom Day and kick off what I know will be an informative and useful workshop. I just concluded a meeting a few minutes ago with a visiting U.S. journalist and told them that the press here in Trinidad and Tobago is filled with very talented people, and it is also a very robust press. I'm happy to see so many of you here with us this morning. I must say I am pleased on how the press has covered my arrival and my brief tenure thus far. I look forward to making myself available to you in the very near future. The work you do is very important, and we appreciate your support and your efforts. The U.S. Embassy works closely with local journalists, but also with the professional associations in supporting capacity building programs and workshops like this one. We appreciate the partnership of TTPBA, MATT, and the Association of Caribbean Media Workers, and I look forward to continuing this strong partnership in the near future. Encouraging a free press and responsible press is one of our strategic goals, supporting the larger goal of governance, strengthening local institutions so they better serve the people. Throughout the world today, the United States embassies are hosting workshops, events in honor of World Press Freedom Day, just like we are doing here today. In many of those countries, journalists do not enjoy the freedoms that you exercise here every day. As Secretary John Kerry said, freedom of expression is one of our country's core values and one which we will continue to defend both at home and overseas. Here in Trinidad and Tobago, press freedom is enshrined in the law and valued by society. But with freedom comes responsibilities. The trainers today will focus on issues of standards and integrity. They will explore with you the tension that can exist between getting an interesting story and being faithful to the truth. Journalists all over the globe, including the U.S. and Trinidad and Tobago, wrestle with challenges of journalistic integrity. Some of our journalists, especially in the digital arena, can rush to judgment and publish a story before doing the necessary research and fact-finding. To me, it all comes down to leadership, and leadership can come from anywhere in the hierarchy. If you demonstrate moral courage, show respect for all you come in contact with, and model integrity, you are a leader, no matter whether you are the editor-in-chief or a junior reporter. There are journalists in other parts of the world who have been repressed, punished, and even killed for practicing their profession. The best way to honor them is to maintain the highest standards possible, show leadership and moral courage, and give your best efforts at all times. If you do this, then you will keep the press and the people of Trinidad and Tobago free. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
I want to say a few words before I get into the program, because for the ACM, this is a very special occasion, because World Press Freedom Day 2016 coincides with observance of the 15th anniversary of the ACM. We have been in existence since 2001, and many didn't think that we would make it, because what are the chances of survival within the framework of how we operate in the Caribbean for an organization that has as its major platform a notion of freedom of expression and freedom of the press? You know, the foundations for this were actually laid a long time ago, and we have had several efforts to get an organization or get some kind of infrastructure in place to ensure that our countries in the Caribbean honor with more vigor the freedom of expression and freedom of the press that's enshrined in so many of our constitutions. So we derive our strength from the fact that there is at least constitutional recognition in most of our countries for freedom of expression, and in even fewer countries for freedom of the press. We use Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as our guide. We recognize that good journalism, particularly in the context of the Caribbean experience, has a sort of explicit developmental impact. It's not that we support a notion of development support journalism, but our view is that the practice of good journalism is going to have a developmental impact. Hence our engagement in a wide variety of issues. For example, we were part of the effort through the Global Forum for Media Development, and I occupy a seat on the steering committee of that organization. We were responsible for pressing for inclusion of access to information as one of the goals in the Sustainable Development Goals. So today, Goal 1610 of the Sustainable Development Goals includes a commitment to promote access to information as a means through which the development process can be advanced. And I'm very proud that the ACM has been able to be a part of that, coming from where we are, from these small developing countries in a part of the world. Sometimes we are delusional about this, but it's a part of the world not many people are aware of. Throughout the years as well, we have extended our international scope through the International Freedom of Expression Exchange. So we currently occupy a seat on the executive of IFEX, and we have had alliances with organizations such as the International Press Institute, a relationship which has led today to the presence of its former executive director, Alison Bethel McKenzie, and also the presence of Mr. Clancy, who came here first in 2012. I don't know if you had been here before, but when we hosted the World Congress in 2012, one of the participants was Mr. Jim Clancy, and we're really happy that he has now become an honorary Trini, and welcome back home, Jim. It's always good to see you. He might have told some of you that he actually snuck back in and had a family vacation in Tobago following the 2012 Congress. So let me get straight a little more into the program now. New Journalism for the New Age is a sort of grandiose kind of title that we've chosen for this. But I think it strikes at the core of what's happening to us. Journalists in the Caribbean are going through a phase right now that's not always recognizable as something that is something of a new frontier because we've had the onset of online media, social media. We've had the advent of all kinds of new platforms for the dissemination of information, news, opinion, and so on, that somehow in that rumble, journalism is made to sort of subsist as something that is valuable to us as professional journalists. So we decided that new journalism for the new age sort of signals that dynamic, and it's something that we're going to address throughout the course of the day, even as we look at some of the founding principles of our practice, which in my view remain relevant today and will continue to remain relevant even with the onset of a new age, the old journalistic principles, the fundamental principles. So the very first program subject would be journalism as a profession and getting it right. And we're going to have two veteran journalists, Mr. Clancy himself and Mr. Julian Rogers, who will take us through that session. Then we're going to look at a very important issue of the journalism of verification. That's the feature of good journalism that ensures that we get it right, that we get the story right, and much more about that when Alison Bethel McKenzie and Dr. Mercedes Bigon take to the front and lead us through that session. We'll have a break for lunch, and then we'll have a presentation by Alison, followed by a panel, a small panel comprising Alison Bethel McKenzie and Judy Raymond, discussing this whole issue of ethical journalism. And that's something that is very, very topical nowadays. And I think that we can have, I think that it would be good for us to have a no-holds-barred conversation about the practice of ethical journalism and get down into the trenches of what is meant by ethical journalism and how that applies in our daily work. Then we're going to have a look at the value, use, and protection of sources with Jim Clancy, another very important, very topical, very current issue. And finally, we'll close on with a session involving myself, my colleague Joel Ford, who is the Assistant General Secretary of the ACM, and Orrin Gordon, who is Editor-in-Chief of the Trinidad Guardian. And we are looking at different platforms, different styles, all in keeping with the theme of new journalism in a new age, journalists now being required to perform across the various platforms, online, in the traditional media, and in some instances, spaces in between. And it's necessary for us to have a look at that because we would need to hone our professional skills in a different way with respect to how we handle or we manage those various platforms.